I'm Felix, I'm 33, and this Christmas was supposed to be simple. That's what my mom said when she called me in late November. Money's tight this year, so don't expect much, okay? Her voice carried that half-apologetic, half-guilty tone she used whenever she wanted me to let something slide before it even happened. I told her I understood. Everyone was feeling the pinch lately, and honestly, I meant it. My focus was just on making the holidays special for my 7-year-old son, Lucas. It's been a rough year for him after my divorce, and I figured a quiet, cozy family Christmas at my parents' house might lift his spirits. I should have known better. My family has always had layers. I'm the middle child, not quite the golden one, not quite the forgotten one. My older sister, Melissa, is the golden child to the textbook definition. She's 36, has 3 kids, a husband who sells insurance, and an Instagram page that looks like a Hallmark movie threw up on it. My younger brother, Tyler, is 27 and still somehow treated like a fragile egg despite being a grown man who freelances, meaning he lives in my parents' basement and occasionally edits podcasts for his friends. Me? I moved out years ago, got my own place, work in IT, and take care of my kid. I don't make a fortune, but I manage. And unlike my siblings, I don't constantly borrow money or need rescuing. That's precisely why, I think, my parents have always felt more comfortable cutting corners with me. I never needed much, so they assumed I didn't deserve much either. When Mom said money was tight, I took her word for it. I even told Lucas that Christmas at Grandma's might be more about family than presents this year. He nodded, understanding in that gentle, too mature for his age way. That made me proud and a little sad at the same time. So Christmas morning came. Snow on the driveway, the smell of cinnamon rolls, everyone crammed into my parents' living room with coffee mugs and pajama pants. The tree looked smaller than usual, but still warm, twinkling with old ornaments and blinking lights. Melissa's kids were already buzzing around the tree, shaking boxes and whispering. Then came Mom's little speech. All right, everyone. Like I said, we kept things small this year. But it's about being together, right? Everyone nodded. And then it started. My niece opened the first gift, an iPad. An actual iPad. Melissa laughed and said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, you didn't." "Oh well," Mom chuckled. "We found a good deal." Then my nephew unwrapped a pair of Nike sneakers. Then another iPad for the second niece. Tyler got noise-canceling headphones. Even his girlfriend, who'd been dating him for 3 months, got a gift card to Sephora. I just sat there smiling politely, waiting. Maybe they saved ours for later. Maybe the big ones were for the kids and smaller ones for adults. It didn't really matter. I just didn't want Lucas to feel left out. When it was finally his turn, Mom handed him a small plastic bag, not even wrapped. Inside was a toy police car, the kind that costs maybe $2 at a dollar store. The wheels were already loose. Lucas looked up at me with this uncertain smile, like he didn't want to seem ungrateful. "Cool," he said softly. I felt something twist in my chest. Mom clapped her hands together and said, "See? Everyone got something." I glanced around the room. Melissa's kids tapping away on their new iPads, Tyler showing off his headphones, Dad leaning back in his chair with that smug smirk that only appears when he thinks he's teaching someone a lesson. Then he looked right at me and said, "Be grateful he got anything, Felix. Not every year can be fancy." For a moment, I just stared at him. Be grateful he got anything. I wanted to ask if being the only grandchild to receive a dollar store toy while the others got electronics was part of this money's tight situation. But I didn't. I just smiled, because I've learned over the years that arguing only feeds them. Melissa noticed my silence, of course. "Oh, come on, Felix," she said, unwrapping another present for her kids. "It's not about the gifts. Easy to say when your kids just got enough tech to start a YouTube channel." The rest of the morning dragged on. I helped Lucas open the toy and pretended it was fun. We played with it on the carpet while my nieces compared apps and took selfies. Every so often, Mom would glance my way, that same nervous guilt flickering across her face, but she never said anything. When breakfast was served, Dad made another joke. He looked at Lucas and said, "Maybe if your dad worked harder, Santa would have brought something bigger." The table went quiet. Even Melissa gave him a look. I felt my hands tighten around my coffee mug. Lucas just stared down at his plate. He didn't cry. He just looked small. Something inside me snapped a little that morning, though I didn't show it. Years of small slights, quiet favoritism, and being told to be grateful. It all stacked up right there under that twinkling Christmas tree. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, reached for my phone, and snapped a photo. The tree in the background, the open gifts, Lucas holding his toy car. No one thought much of it. But the next morning, when I posted it with a caption, well, that's when everything began to unravel. And I mean everything. When I woke up the next morning, the photo was already sitting at the top of my phone gallery, staring back at me like a quiet dare. I hadn't even planned to post anything originally. I just wanted a reminder, not of the gift, but of that moment. The way Lucas smiled, even when he was disappointed. The way my parents didn't even notice. The way it all looked perfectly normal from the outside. But something inside me shifted overnight. Maybe it was how Lucas had asked, before going to bed, "Dad, did I do something wrong? Grandma didn't like my letter?" He'd written her a Christmas card a week earlier, decorated it with stickers, drew a snowman, and wrote, "I love you, Grandma." That's the kind of kid he is. Sweet, thoughtful, the opposite of entitled. I had no answer for him. I just told him she loved him very much and that adults sometimes forget what's fair. But that look on his face, that stuck with me. So I posted the picture. It was the one of Lucas sitting cross-legged on the carpet, holding his cheap toy while his cousins tore into boxes behind him. The tree lights glowed in the background, and you could see one of the iPads reflecting the light right next to him. The caption? Simple. When money's tight, turns out to be selective. Merry Christmas from the discount section. No names. No accusations. Just that. I didn't expect it to explode. At first, a few friends liked it. Then a couple of co-workers commented things like, "That's rough, man," or "Hang in there, Felix." But within an hour, it started getting shared. Someone must have screenshotted it and posted it to a local group because by lunchtime, I was getting DMs from people I hadn't talked to since high school. Then came the group chat. Our family group chat is called Christmas Tree Family Festivities Christmas Tree, which, ironically, has never once been festive. I saw the unread messages piling up before I even opened it. "Mom, Felix, what is this post?" "Melissa, wow. Really mature of you." "Dad, take that down." Now, I stared at my screen for a moment before responding. "Me, which part's not true?" 10 minutes of silence. Then Melissa replied, "Melissa, you're trying to embarrass Mom and Dad. You know they've done their best." I almost laughed. Their best. That phrase has been used as a shield for decades. Their best when they forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. Their best when they skipped Lucas's kindergarten recital because Tyler wasn't feeling well. Their best when they paid Melissa's down payment for her house, but told me, "We don't want to play favorites." I typed back, "If this is their best, I'd hate to see their worst." That's when Dad called me. "Felix," he said the moment I answered, his voice tight. "You need to delete that post right now. Your mother's upset." "Why is she upset?" I asked calmly. "Because people finally saw what it looks like when she plays favorites." Watch your tone. There it was. The phrase that always ended every argument when I was growing up. It didn't matter if I was right or if I was just asking for fairness. Watch your tone was the stop sign. "Dad," I said, trying to stay level. "Lucas got a broken toy from a dollar store while everyone else got electronics. You and Mom lied about being broke. Why shouldn't people know that?" He scoffed. "We don't owe you explanations for how we spend our money. Maybe we thought Melissa's kids needed it more." That line hit me like a punch. They're not exactly starving, Dad. They have 2 parents, both working, both well off. Lucas and I are fine too, but that's not the point. It's about fairness. "Life's not fair," he said, with that smug tone he used when he thought he was teaching a lesson. "You of all people should know that." I took a deep breath. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I learned it from you." And I hung up. After that, things escalated fast. Mom texted separately, paragraphs long, filled with half apologies disguised as explanations. "We just wanted the kids to be happy, Felix. You know how Melissa's kids are used to certain things. We didn't think Lucas would care about brands. You've raised him so well. You should be proud that he's not materialistic." Proud. That word burned. I knew what she was really saying. You should be proud that he's easier to shortchange. I didn't respond. But then she sent another message. "We'll make it up to him next year. Don't ruin Christmas for everyone." Next year. As if it was some scheduling error. As if this wasn't a pattern that had repeated for years. And she wasn't done. An hour later, she added, "Your father says you're overreacting. It was just a small gift. Maybe you should apologize to everyone for the post before this gets worse." That's when I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry I'd made it visible. That evening, Melissa called. Not to apologize, to scold. Felix, seriously, she said, her voice dripping with that fake concern she uses when she's talking to someone she thinks is beneath her. You're making Mom cry. You know she's sensitive. Is that before or after she laughed at my son's toy? I asked. Oh, come on. She didn't mean anything by it. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just gifts. Then why are you so upset? She hesitated. Because you're humiliating our family. There it was. Not hurting the family. Humiliating them. I didn't humiliate anyone, I said. They did that themselves. She sighed dramatically. You always do this, Felix. Always the victim. You think the world owes you something because you didn't get the same things we did. Maybe if you had kids sooner or a wife who could contribute, Mom and Dad wouldn't feel so bad for Melissa's kids. That one hit deep. Not because it was true, but because of how effortlessly cruel it was. My ex-wife left years ago, and I'd worked hard to give Lucas stability since then. Melissa knew that. She just wanted to twist the knife. Thanks for the insight, Mel, I said quietly, then hung up. By the next morning, the post had gone viral. Not full-blown internet famous, but local viral. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Most people didn't know who I was, but they all understood the story. The comments flooded in. This breaks my heart. That little boy deserved better. Selective generosity is emotional abuse, not love. Opie's parents sound like the type who reward loyalty, not effort. Reading those hit me harder than I expected. Strangers, total strangers, saw what my family had ignored for decades. And that terrified my parents. They started calling nonstop. Mom left voicemails alternating between crying and scolding. Dad texted me, "Take the post down or you're out of the will." Melissa chimed in with, "Don't come to New Year's dinner if you're planning to act like a victim again." I didn't answer any of them. That week, something strange happened. My aunt, Dad's sister, called me. We don't talk much, but she said she'd seen the photo through a mutual friend. Her voice was soft, careful. "I just wanted to say," she began, "I've noticed how they treat you over the years. You're not crazy. It's always been like that. Your mom and dad have always put Melissa on a pedestal. I think they do it because it makes them feel successful. You were independent, so they never thought you needed anything." Hearing that, it was like someone had lifted a weight I didn't know I was carrying. It wasn't all in my head. I thanked her, and she said, "Don't back down, Felix. Sometimes the only way to show people who they are is by holding up a mirror." Meanwhile, Lucas went back to school and showed his classmates his toy car. They were talking about what they got for Christmas, and when one of them asked, "That's all?" he just shrugged and said, "Yeah, but it's okay. My dad said we don't need big gifts to be happy." That broke me a little. I promised myself that no matter how this unfolded, I wouldn't let him see the worst of it. A few days later, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off a dish I'd borrowed during Christmas dinner. I didn't plan to stay long, just in and out. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. Tyler's car was there. Melissa's too. When I stepped inside, everyone was waiting in the living room. It felt like an ambush. Mom was sitting on the couch, tissue in hand, pretending to cry. Dad stood near the fireplace like he was presiding over a courtroom. Melissa sat next to Mom, arms crossed, already ready to attack. "Felix," Dad said coldly. "Sit." I stayed standing. "This has gone far enough," he continued. "Your little stunt online humiliated this family. Do you realize how many people have seen that photo? People from church are talking. The neighbors are talking. Your mother can't even go to the store without someone bringing it up." "Good," I said. "Maybe now she knows what it feels like to be embarrassed in front of others." "Don't be cruel," Melissa snapped. I turned to her. "Cruel? You all laughed while my son sat there pretending he wasn't hurt. And you think I'm cruel?" Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling just enough to sound performative. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone, Felix. You've always been so sensitive. You take everything personally. Maybe because you make everything personal," I said quietly. "Every holiday, every birthday, every family moment, there's always a ranking system, and Lucas and I are always at the bottom." Mom dabbed her eyes. "You're twisting everything. We love you all equally." Tyler, who'd been silent until then, muttered, "Then why'd you tell me last week that Melissa deserves more because she's got kids and you're just one guy with a computer job?" The room froze. Mom's face went pale. Dad's jaw clenched. Melissa turned on Tyler instantly. "Why would you say that?" He shrugged. Because it's true. You said it, Mom. You said Felix doesn't need handouts. You said giving him less makes him stronger. She looked like she wanted to melt into the couch. I stared at her, waiting for her to deny it, but she didn't. She just whispered, "That's not how I meant it." Something shifted in that moment. The fragile image they'd built for themselves started to crack. And that was before I showed them what I'd brought with me that day, something that would change everything in the next part of this story. Because I hadn't come to return a dish. I'd come with proof. I didn't sit down. My dad was still standing by the fireplace like some kind of judge waiting to hand down a sentence. But for the first time in years, I wasn't the one on trial. I was calm. Too calm, probably. The kind of calm that comes when you've already been burned too many times to feel the fire anymore. Mom tried to speak again, her voice trembling. "Felix, we can talk about this privately. There's no need to drag the whole family into it." "Why not?" I asked. "You didn't mind dragging me in front of everyone when Dad made that little joke about how I should work harder so Lucas could get better gifts." Dad's face darkened. "That was just a joke. It wasn't funny," I said quietly. No one said anything for a long moment. The ticking clock in the hallway sounded like a metronome, keeping time for our collective discomfort. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Plain, white, unmarked. Mom's eyes flicked to it immediately. "What's that?" she asked. "The truth," I said, setting it on the coffee table. Since everyone seems so invested in pretending this is all just a misunderstanding. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. What are you doing now, Felix? Another dramatic stunt." I ignored her. I slid the envelope toward my dad. "Go ahead. Open it." He hesitated, then picked it up and pulled out the papers inside. Printouts, screenshots, and a few old photos. His expression shifted from confusion to irritation to something I hadn't seen before, unease. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked. "Receipts," I said simply. "Literal and metaphorical." Mom reached over, taking the pages from him, scanning them quickly. Her hand froze halfway down the second page. It was a printout from her email, one she'd sent to Melissa about a month before Christmas. "I want to do something special for the kids this year. Melissa, can you send me their wish lists? I'll make sure they get exactly what they asked for. Don't tell Felix. We'll say we're cutting back so he doesn't expect much." Silence. Her lips parted, like she wanted to come up with an excuse, but nothing came out. "How did you get this?" she finally whispered. "You accidentally sent it to the wrong email," I said. "You must have typed my address instead of Melissa's at some point. It landed in my spam folder. I didn't even see it until a few days ago." Dad crossed his arms. "You went snooping." I laughed, humorless. "You're seriously trying to twist this into me being the problem again?" Tyler leaned forward, squinting at the page. "Wait, is this real?" Mom didn't answer. Melissa did, her voice sharp. "You're making it sound like some evil plot." "It was just Mom trying to make Christmas nice for everyone." "Everyone," I said. "Or just your kids?" She shot back instantly. "Oh, give it a rest, Felix. You've always been jealous of me." That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Not because it was true, but because she genuinely believed it. She thought my frustration, my exhaustion, my disappointment, all of it, came from envy instead of decades of being treated like an afterthought. "You really think I'd be jealous of someone who can't go a single month without borrowing money from Mom and Dad?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've built your whole life on handouts and still act like you're entitled to more." She stood up then, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than us because you've got some middle-class job and one kid? Newsflash, Felix. You're just bitter because no one spoils you anymore." I almost said something cruel, but I caught Lucas's face in my mind. The look he gave me that night when he asked if he'd done something wrong. So instead, I just said, "You're right. No one spoils me. But that's not the problem. The problem is you've mistaken neglect for fairness." That's when Mom snapped. "Enough," she shouted, slamming her hand on the armrest. Her voice cracked, but the performance was gone. This was the real her, the sharp tone that used to make me freeze when I was 10. "You've always seen yourself as the victim, Felix. You think everything we do is some kind of attack on you. You've never once appreciated what we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. That shut her up for a second. "You didn't pay for college," I continued. "You said it would build character. You didn't help when my car broke down, even though you co-signed Melissa's SUV. You didn't come to my wedding because it was on the same weekend as Tyler's guy's trip. And every time I've needed something, just some emotional support, You've said, you're independent, Felix. You can handle it. My voice wavered, just a little. So yeah, I handled it. I built a life on my own. I worked 2 jobs to afford that house. I made sure Lucas never had to see me break down. But watching him that morning, watching him try to smile while every other kid in the room got everything they wanted, something broke in me. Because that was the moment I realized you didn't just forget me. You forgot him too. Mom's eyes were wet now, but it wasn't guilt. It was anger. We didn't forget him. We just couldn't afford. Stop, I said. Don't say it. Don't lie again. Dad slammed the papers down on the table. This conversation's over. You're not going to stand here and accuse your mother of being a liar. She did lie, Tyler muttered. I saw the email. Stay out of this. Dad barked. Tyler leaned back, hands up. Just saying. Mom stood now, her voice rising again. You're twisting everything. We were trying to help Melissa because she's struggling. Struggling? I said, incredulous. They just went to Disney last month. Dad glared. That's enough. And that's when he said it, the sentence that changed everything. You were never supposed to have that kid anyway. The room went still. I felt every word like a physical hit. What did you just say? I asked. He didn't back down. You heard me. You weren't ready. You didn't plan for him. You didn't have the stability. We all said it was a mistake, but you wouldn't listen. And now you want to punish us for being right. I could feel my pulse in my ears. That kid is your grandson, I said, my voice shaking. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. And you just called him a mistake. Mom started crying again, but it was different now. Less sadness, more panic. He didn't mean it, Felix. Please, don't twist his words. But I wasn't listening anymore. It was like something inside me had gone cold. All the little comments over the years about how Lucas was too sensitive, how I shouldn't spoil him, how some kids just aren't cut out for fancy things. They all clicked into place. They didn't just think less of me. They thought less of him. And suddenly, I realized I didn't even want to be standing in that house anymore. I turned toward the door. Where are you going? Dad demanded. Home, I said. You're not walking out on your family. I turned back to him slowly. You're not my family anymore. Melissa gasped like I just cursed at the Pope. Oh, come on, Felix. Don't be dramatic. You're just upset. Upset. I said. No. Upset is when you forget someone's birthday. Upset is when you argue over dinner. This, I gestured toward the crumpled email in Mom's hands. This is betrayal. I walked to the door, but before I could leave, Tyler spoke up. Hey, Felix, he said quietly. You forgot your dish. I turned back, and for a moment, our eyes met. He didn't look smug or sarcastic. He looked sad, almost guilty. I shook my head. Keep it. Consider it my contribution to the family. Then I left. I didn't even realize how tight my chest had been until I got into my car and exhaled. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. For a few minutes, I just sat there, staring at the house through the windshield, watching the silhouettes move behind the curtains. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Tyler. You were right. About everything. Check your email. When I got home and opened my laptop, there it was. An email from Tyler with no subject line, just a bunch of attachments. Bank statements, screenshots, scans of checks. And in that moment, I understood that this wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was theft. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after Lucas had gone to bed, the glow from my laptop screen lighting the dim room. Tyler's email was still open, staring back at me. 24 attachments, all meticulously labeled. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe he sent me the wrong thing. But as I started clicking through, the truth unfolded slowly, painfully. There were copies of checks from my parents' account made out to Melissa, not small ones, either. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, regularly. Some even marked loan repayment in the memo line. Others were labeled for kids' school or house fund. Then came the kicker, 2 checks to Tyler. One for a few hundred, another for 1,000. Both labeled miscellaneous help. And me? Nothing. Not one single transaction. That part didn't surprise me. But what did was the date on one of the larger checks. 2 weeks before Christmas. $10,000. The note said Melissa, gifts and expenses. My parents hadn't just lied about being tight on money. They deliberately funneled thousands to my sister so she could play Santa while telling me not to expect much. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my face. It felt like my entire childhood was printed across those documents. Every quiet disappointment, every dismissive comment, every time they told me I was so independent while secretly propping up my siblings behind the scenes. But what cut deepest wasn't even the money. It was the confirmation that they'd looked at my son, their grandson, and decided he didn't deserve the same joy as the others. For a long while, I just sat there staring at the screen, numb. Then I opened the next folder Tyler had attached. Conversations. Screenshots. Text threads. The first one was between him and Mom. Mom. Tyler, can you make sure Felix doesn't find out what we're doing for Christmas this year? I don't want any drama. Tyler, why would he care? Mom, he'll make it about money. He always does. Tyler, you mean fairness? Mom, you're just like him lately. Don't start. I scrolled down, reading line after line of her justifying the favoritism like it was some kind of kindness. Mom, Melissa's kids need to feel special. They notice things. Felix's boy is quiet. He won't mind. He won't mind. I pushed away from the table and stood up. My stomach twisted like I was going to be sick. I walked over to the window. The street outside was empty, the world silent. Snowflakes drifted past the glass in lazy spirals, collecting on the porch steps. It was peaceful out there, a cruel contrast to the storm brewing inside my chest. For years I told myself my parents' favoritism was just subtle, maybe unintentional. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was too sensitive. But seeing it all in black and white, their words, their money, their intentions, it felt like reading a confession letter from someone who'd never even realized they were confessing. I closed my laptop. The noise of it snapping shut was louder than it should have been. Then I walked down the hall to Lucas's room. He was asleep, curled up under his blanket, one arm draped around that little toy police car. The paint was already chipped. One of the wheels was gone, but he'd taken it to bed every night since Christmas. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him breathe. For the first time in my life, I understood what rock bottom really felt like. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was the hollow quiet that comes after the last straw snaps. When you stop waiting for things to get better because you finally realize they never will. I whispered softly, "You deserve so much more, buddy." He stirred, half awake, and murmured, "Love you, Dad." That broke me. I sat there for a while, trying not to cry, but eventually I did. Quietly, carefully. Because if there was one thing I didn't want, it was for him to wake up and see his dad crying over a family that never deserved him in the first place. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I told Lucas he could stay home from school for a dad day. We built Legos, made pancakes, watched a movie. For the first time in a week, he laughed. That real, belly-deep laugh that kids have when they feel safe. And while he was playing, I sat back down at the kitchen table, opened the laptop, and started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. I went through my finances, my old photos, old text threads with my parents. I wanted to understand exactly how far this pattern went. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. There was a text from Mom a year ago. "Sorry, we can't contribute to Lucas's birthday this time. Things are tight." That same week, Melissa had posted a photo of her new kitchen renovation. "Thanks, Mom and Dad," in the caption. Another year, Mom telling me she couldn't afford to help with Lucas's school trip. Then Melissa tagging them in a photo of a Disney cruise. Each time, the same words. "Money's tight." And each time, I believed them. By the afternoon, I was emotionally drained. Lucas was in the living room watching cartoons, humming along, blissfully unaware of everything. I envied that, the innocence of not knowing. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Tyler again. "Tyler, you okay?" Me, "Not really." "Tyler, I figured. You saw everything?" Me, "Yeah. Why did you send it?" "Tyler, because I'm done pretending. I used to think you exaggerated. I see it now. They treat you like a stranger." Me, "You didn't have to get involved." "Tyler, I did. They're already blaming me for turning you against them. Might as well earn it." That last message hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I realized Tyler wasn't the same spoiled kid who used to roll his eyes whenever I brought this stuff up. He looked tired too. Maybe years of being coddled had worn thin, or maybe he was just finally old enough to see how warped it all was. We texted for a while, quietly, him venting about Mom's manipulation, me trying to process it all. Then he said something that stuck. "You don't have to keep taking it, man. Just because they're family doesn't mean they get to keep breaking you." He was right. That night, after Lucas went to bed again, I opened my phone to see new notifications. Dozens. My post, the one about selective generosity, had blown up even more. People were sharing it on parenting pages, local forums, Reddit threads. I scrolled through the comments. I had the same kind of mom. She always said be grateful while giving my brother everything. OP, your son will remember how you handled this. You're teaching him self-respect. You can't fix people who need someone to feel lesser so they can feel good about themselves. I didn't respond to anyone, but I read every word. It was strange. Validation from strangers felt more like family than anything I'd gotten from my actual family in years. Then, around midnight, Mom texted again. Mom, I hope you're happy. Your father hasn't eaten since that argument. I barely slept. Melissa's kids are asking why you hate them. I stared at the message for a while before replying. Me, I don't hate anyone. I'm just done pretending. No reply. The next day, she called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Felix, listen, we made mistakes, all right? But you're taking things too far. You're making us out to be villains. You need to take that post down before this gets any worse. Please, for your son's sake. For my son's sake. The irony of that nearly made me laugh. When I didn't answer, she sent another message, this time from Dad's phone. Dad, if you're going to continue disrespecting this family, don't bother showing up again. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. That evening, I took Lucas to the park. It was cold, the air biting, the snow crunching under our boots. He ran around chasing pigeons while I sat on a bench watching him. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight them anymore. Not directly. I wasn't going to beg them to see the truth or try to fix what was already broken. I tried for years, and all it had done was cost me peace. But that didn't mean I was done. Quietly, methodically, I started preparing to cut the cord and to make sure everyone saw exactly who my parents really were before I did. Over the next week, I gathered everything Tyler had sent, combined it with my own proof, texts, receipts, old messages. I created a folder on my desktop called The Truth. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it yet, but something inside me told me I'd know when the time came. In the meantime, I focused on Lucas. I picked him up early from school, helped him with homework, made hot chocolate, let him pick out a new toy, one he actually wanted. Watching his face light up reminded me that love didn't need to be expensive to be meaningful. It just had to be genuine. One night, he asked, Dad, are we seeing Grandma and Grandpa again soon? I hesitated. Not for a little while, buddy. We're giving them some space. He thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Okay, can we invite Auntie Sarah instead? My ex's sister, who'd always been kind to him. Yeah, I said softly. We can do that. He smiled and went back to his drawing, humming to himself. I watched him for a long time, realizing that the less time he spent around my family, the brighter he seemed. Still, late at night, I'd catch myself thinking about everything. The years I'd wasted trying to earn their approval, the quiet humiliations, the countless be grateful speeches. It all added up to this moment. Me, alone in my kitchen, sipping cold coffee, with an overflowing folder of evidence sitting on my desktop like a ticking clock. I wasn't ready to press the button yet, but I would be, because rock bottom doesn't just break you. It clears the ground so you can finally rebuild. And as I stared at that folder labeled The Truth, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't want revenge just to hurt them. I wanted justice, not for me, but for Lucas. They'd made him feel small once. I was going to make sure they never had that power again. By the time January rolled around, the snow had turned to slush and the world outside started to thaw. But inside my little house, something new was growing. A quiet kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. After that Christmas disaster, I expected things to get harder. I expected the guilt trips, the calls, the endless cycle of emotional manipulation. But instead, silence. Real, eerie silence. My parents didn't call. Melissa didn't text. Even Dad stopped sending his passive-aggressive, hope you've learned something messages. At first, it felt strange, like standing in a room where the hum of an old machine had suddenly stopped. But after a week or two, the quiet turned freeing. I started sleeping better. My appetite came back. And Lucas, he was blooming. Without the shadow of my parents' judgment, he seemed lighter, happier. I didn't realize how much their presence had been affecting him until it was gone. He stopped asking when we'd visit Grandma and Grandpa. Instead, he started talking about new things, wanting to build a birdhouse, learning guitar, maybe even joining the soccer team. We filled our weekends with simple things. Pancake mornings, library trips, movie nights. I started cooking again, real meals, not just microwave leftovers. The house felt alive for the first time in forever. One evening, while we were painting the birdhouse together, Lucas said, "Dad, this is more fun than Christmas was." I smiled. "Yeah? You think so?" He nodded. "It's just us. I like that better." Something in me loosened. For so long, I'd measured family by obligation, showing up, keeping peace, tolerating disrespect. But sitting there with paint on my hands and my son's laughter filling the room, I realized this was family. Not blood, not titles, just love, safety, and presence. That same week, something unexpected happened. Remember that photo I posted, the one that blew up? A local parenting blog had picked it up and written an article about it. The Selective Generosity Christmas, they called it. It wasn't sensationalized, just honest. They didn't use names, but they quoted my post and talked about emotional inequality in families. The story hit a nerve. Within days, there were hundreds of comments from people sharing their own experiences, parents, children, even grandparents admitting they'd made similar mistakes. The story got shared on Twitter, Facebook, even Reddit. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was everyone's. I didn't say anything publicly, I didn't need to. But privately, it gave me a strange sense of validation. The years of gaslighting, the accusations of "you're just overreacting," the guilt trips, all of it felt like it finally had a name. People saw it for what it was. Meanwhile, work was going better than ever. I'd been in the same IT position for almost 7 years, reliable, but overlooked, kind of like how my family treated me. But after Christmas, something clicked. I started staying late again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I began proposing solutions instead of just fixing problems. My boss noticed. By February, I was leading a project to overhaul our internal systems. It wasn't glamorous, but it was big. I poured myself into it, channeling all that leftover anger and disappointment into something productive. Lucas would sit on the couch doing homework while I worked at the table. He'd ask questions about what I was doing, and I'd explain in kid terms, "Dad's teaching computers how to talk to each other." He loved that idea. Then, one day in March, my boss pulled me aside. "Felix," he said, "you've been killing it lately. The higher-ups noticed. We're promoting you to systems manager. Comes with a pay bump and a small team." I just stood there for a moment, stunned. That night, Lucas and I celebrated with pizza and ice cream. He insisted we cheers with our soda cans. "Does this mean we can get a new couch now?" he asked with a grin. I laughed. "Maybe. But first we're getting you a new bike." It was more than a promotion, it was proof. Proof that I didn't need my family's approval or support to build something good. I could stand on my own. I was standing on my own. And just like that, things began to shift even more. Tyler and I started talking regularly. Not just about our parents, but about life. He'd begun freelancing seriously, building a client base instead of coasting on handouts. He told me, "I think you scared me straight, man." He wasn't wrong. For years, he'd been in the comfort zone my parents built for him. But when I confronted them, and when Mom blamed him for fueling my rebellion, he finally saw the strings attached to that comfort. We became closer than we'd ever been. He even came over a few times to hang out with Lucas. The two of them clicked instantly. "Uncle Ty's cool," Lucas told me one night. "He talks to me like I'm a person, not a baby." I smiled. "Yeah, he's learning." Meanwhile, Melissa was quiet. I didn't hear from her directly, but through Tyler, I knew things weren't going great for her. Her husband's insurance business was struggling. The house payments were piling up. Apparently, she'd even gone to our parents asking for another temporary loan. And for once, Mom said no. Tyler told me that Dad was furious after my post went viral, not just because of the attention, but because people at his church had recognized the story. Word got around. People whispered. And that, apparently, was unacceptable for a man like him. "They're embarrassed," Tyler said over the phone one night. "They care more about reputation than anything. You hit them where it hurts." I didn't mean to humiliate them, I said. "I know, but they did that to themselves." He was right. By April, I was in a completely different place mentally. I'd paid off my car, started saving for a vacation, and finally signed Lucas up for that soccer team. Watching him run around on the field, shouting and laughing with the other kids, I felt something I hadn't felt since before my marriage fell apart. Pride without pain attached to it. Every small victory felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then, one evening, while I was cooking dinner, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. Hello. Felix. The voice was faint, shaky. It was my mom. I froze. She sounded older, fragile in a way I hadn't heard before. I know you probably don't want to talk, she said, but I just wanted to say we've been thinking about you. About Lucas. I stayed silent. She sighed. We saw the news. Congratulations on your promotion. I almost laughed. The way she said it, as if she'd heard about a distant acquaintance's good fortune. Thanks, I said flatly. There was a pause. Then, quietly, you were right about a lot of things. That caught me off guard. She continued, her voice trembling. We shouldn't have treated you that way. I thought I was doing what was best. I didn't realize how much it hurt you. I didn't respond right away. For a second, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered Christmas morning. The laughter, the dollar store toy, Dad's smirk when he said be grateful he got anything. Mom, I said finally, I appreciate you saying that. But I can't go back to pretending everything's fine. I don't expect you to, she said quickly. I'd like to see you. And Lucas. Maybe for dinner sometime. Just us. I'll think about it, I said, though we both knew I wouldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. After we hung up, I stood there for a while, staring at the stove as the pasta boiled over. I wasn't angry, just tired. But beneath that tiredness was something new, clarity. They were trying to reach out not because they missed me, but because they felt the walls closing in. The story had taken a life of its own online. People were connecting dots, even though I'd never named names. Small-town gossip has a way of filling in blanks. Still, I didn't care about payback at that moment. I was finally living without them, and it felt good. Then, one Friday evening, Tyler came over with a grin. Guess what? He said, dropping a thick envelope on my table. What's this? Bank statements, he said. From Dad's business account. You might want to take a look. I frowned. Why are you giving me this? He leaned back. Because you deserve to know where all those tight finances went. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were more documents, transfers, payments, records going back years. But one thing stood out immediately, my name. Apparently, my father had opened a joint account in my name years ago, without telling me, and had been moving money through it. To pay Melissa, to pay Tyler, even to cover his own expenses. He'd been using my name. My stomach dropped. Is this legal? Tyler shook his head. Barely, but it's enough to ruin his reputation if anyone ever saw it. I sat there, the realization sinking in like slow poison. They hadn't just disrespected me, they'd used me. And suddenly, that quiet folder on my desktop labeled the truth didn't feel like a safety net anymore. It felt like a weapon, one I was finally ready to use. Because I wasn't the broken son anymore. I was the one holding all the cards. The next few days after Tyler dropped, that envelope were a blur. I went through every page, line by line, until my eyes ached. The transactions were all there, thousands of dollars funneled from my dad's business into personal accounts, Melissa's mortgage, even Tyler's freelance equipment. Some of them, disturbingly, were under my name. He'd used that joint account to move funds as if I'd been complicit. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the emotional, explosive sense. I was cold, focused. It was like every nerve had gone quiet, and all that remained was strategy. For years, I'd been the one who swallowed my pride for the sake of keeping peace. But now, I had the receipts, the lies, the proof. And unlike them, I wasn't interested in starting a fight. I was going to end one. I didn't rush it. That's the thing about revenge. The best kind doesn't come from fury. It comes from clarity. First, I met with someone I trusted, an old college friend named Hannah who worked in accounting. We sat at a coffee shop, and I laid everything out. She scanned through the documents, frowning deeper with every page. Felix, this is bad. If your dad's been moving money like this through your name, it's not just unethical. It could technically qualify as tax evasion, depending on what he reported. My stomach tightened. Could it affect me legally? Potentially, yeah, she said. But you've got proof you didn't authorize any of it. These records show the withdrawals came from his IP address and his office location. You're clear. But he isn't. I exhaled slowly. She looked at me carefully. You planning to go to the authorities? I hesitated. Not yet. Then what? I smiled faintly. Let's just say I want him to understand what it feels like to lose something he thinks he owns. Over the next week, I worked quietly. Tyler helped. He'd already distanced himself from our parents, and after realizing Dad had used him too, he was all in. We combed through public business filings, property records, anything with my father's name on it. And that's when we found something interesting. His company wasn't doing as well as he made it seem. He'd been juggling money between accounts to make it look profitable. The Christmas money for Melissa? It came from a business expense reimbursement, one he claimed was paid to me. My dad had literally written my name into his tax fraud. That was the moment I knew exactly how to hit back. But I didn't go scorched earth. That's what they'd expect. They'd expect rage, confrontation, chaos. Instead, I went subtle, surgical. The first step was reputation. I didn't post anything new myself. I didn't have to. The parenting article about selective generosity was still quietly making rounds online. I simply sent an anonymous email to a few local journalists who'd written about small-town family businesses before. I attached a handful of the wrong bank transfers, the ones marked with my name on business reimbursements. Subject line: might be worth looking into. This company's books don't add up. That was all it took. Within 2 weeks, the local paper ran a piece titled "Community Business Faces Financial Questions." It didn't name my father directly at first, but anyone who knew him recognized the details: the business name, the size, the family-run angle. The piece asked gentle questions, citing unexplained transfers and inconsistencies in reported expenses. The fallout was immediate. Dad called me first. I didn't answer. Then he left a voicemail, his voice trembling with fury. "I know this was you. You're playing with fire, Felix. You'll regret this." For once, I didn't feel afraid. Instead, I opened my laptop, clicked into my The Truth folder, and hit upload. I didn't post it publicly. Not yet. I uploaded it to a secure cloud link, one only I controlled, and sent it privately to the same journalist. This time, with more context. "Since your article ran, I thought you should see these. Bank statements showing transfers in my name. Messages from family confirming the misuse. Screenshots proving I never authorized anything. No signature. Just an email address I'd created for this purpose." Then I shut the laptop and took Lucas to soccer practice. By the next morning, it was everywhere. The follow-up article dropped at 8 a.m. Business owner under investigation for misuse of funds. This time, my dad's name was front and center. I didn't even have to share it. Everyone in town did that for me. Tyler texted me at noon. He's losing it. He thinks Melissa leaked something. Mom's crying. It's chaos. I didn't reply. At work, I kept my head down. My promotion had come with a small private office, and I spent that day focused on spreadsheets and reports. Calm, efficient, composed. But inside, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. That evening, I came home to a stack of voicemails. Mom, Melissa, even Dad again. I didn't listen to any of them. I just sat down with Lucas and helped him build his new Lego set. "Dad," he asked, "are Grandma and Grandpa still mad?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but that's not our problem anymore." He nodded thoughtfully, then went back to building. A few days later, Tyler called again. "You might want to know," he said. "Dad's business license is under review. They're auditing his accounts." I leaned back, staring out the window. Good. Maybe he'll finally learn that actions have consequences. Tyler hesitated. "You sure you're okay with all this?" "I'm not happy about it," I said honestly. "But I'm at peace with it. Because here's the thing, I didn't destroy him. He did that himself. I just handed the truth to the right people. And when the truth is ugly enough, it doesn't need help catching fire." By the end of spring, my father's company had quietly shut down for restructuring. Melissa deleted her Instagram for a while after people started leaving comments like, "Hope your next vacation isn't paid for by fake invoices." My mom, from what Tyler said, was humiliated beyond words. Me? I kept living my life. Lucas finished his soccer season. My team at work launched the project successfully. I started running in the mornings, feeling lighter each day. One Saturday, while we were walking back from the park, Lucas said, "Dad, when people do bad things, do they always get caught?" I smiled a little. "Not always right away," I said. "But the truth has a way of finding them eventually." He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't fully. That night, I checked my email one last time. A new message was waiting from the journalist. "Thank you for your information. The investigation is ongoing, But I wanted you to know it made a difference. I stared at the screen for a while, then closed it. Because the revenge wasn't about making them suffer anymore. It was about balance. About showing that you can't keep taking from someone who finally knows their worth. I didn't need to confront them again. I didn't need an apology that would never be sincere. All I needed was peace. And maybe, just maybe, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the family who taught me to be grateful for anything would now have to learn what it meant to lose everything. And as I turned off the light and checked on Lucas one more time, I realized something simple and powerful. The best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was rebuilding myself so completely that their absence finally felt like relief. The fallout came slower than I expected, not in a single explosion, but in ripples that spread quietly, touching everything my parents had built and believed in. For the first few weeks after the article dropped, they stayed silent. It was the calm before the storm. Then, the storm arrived. It started with a letter, not to me, but to them. The State Revenue Department opened an official investigation into my father's business practices. Apparently, the journalist had done more digging than I realized, and the documents I provided had made their way into the hands of people who had the power to act. Tyler called me the day my parents got the notice. "You should have seen Dad's face," he said. He opened it right at breakfast. Went pale as a ghost. Mom kept asking, "What is it?" And he just kept saying, "It's nothing. It's a mistake." But it wasn't nothing. Over the next few weeks, they were audited. Every account, every reimbursement, every dollar that had conveniently vanished into family members' pockets. Melissa got pulled into it too, since several checks had gone straight to her account. Their perfect family reputation started to crumble from the inside out. The neighbors talked. People at church whispered. The same people my parents once tried so hard to impress now crossed the street to avoid them. At first, they tried to control the narrative. Dad told anyone who'd listened that it was all a misunderstanding, that jealous competitors had sabotaged him. But then the facts came out. The investigators found a trail of falsified transactions, not enough to land him in prison, but enough to cost him everything that mattered to him: credibility, stability, and pride. The business license was revoked. The family name that once stood for respect in our small town was suddenly synonymous with deceit. And I didn't lift a finger. Tyler kept me updated occasionally, though I asked him not to tell me too much. I didn't need to revel in their downfall. I just wanted distance. Still, part of me couldn't help but wonder how they were handling it. Then one afternoon in June, I got my answer. Mom showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her in months. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. The kind of shrinkage that happens when pride collapses in on itself. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup uneven, her hair tied back like she hadn't bothered much that morning. "Felix," she said quietly when I opened the door. "Mom." We stood there for a long moment, neither of us moving. Behind me, Lucas was on the couch watching TV. He glanced toward the door, saw her, and froze. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I shouldn't be here," she started, wringing her hands. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't say anything. She looked up at me with a trembling lip. "Everything's gone, Felix. Your father's business, the accounts, the clients, all gone. They froze the assets. We might lose the house." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said softly, though my voice was neutral. She winced. "I know you probably think we deserve it." "I don't think anything," I said. "I just think actions have consequences." Her eyes watered. "I didn't know he was using your name like that." I swear I didn't. I believed her. But that didn't make it any better. "You knew what he was," I said. "You just chose not to see it. Because it benefited you." She swallowed hard. "You have every right to hate us." I sighed, shaking my head. "I don't hate you, Mom. I just don't trust you anymore." Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, she looked like she might reach out, maybe to hug me, maybe to beg, but she didn't. "I just wanted to see you," she said quietly. "And Lucas." I hesitated, then shook my head. "Not today." Her face crumpled. "Please, Felix. He's still your father. He's not well." That caught my attention. "What do you mean?" "He's been having panic attacks," she said, voice trembling. "Barely sleeping. The stress, the shame, it's breaking him. He doesn't talk to anyone. Just sits in the den staring at the floor." I stayed silent, processing that. There was a time when hearing that would have filled me with guilt, or pity, or maybe even a desire to fix things. But not now. Because for the first time, I realized something profound. His suffering didn't heal anything. It didn't erase what he did or what he said. It didn't make him a different person. It was just the echo of his own choices. After a long pause, I said quietly, "Maybe now he knows what it's like to be powerless." She flinched at that. Then, after a long moment, she nodded. "Maybe he does." We stood there a bit longer, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "Take care of yourself," I said finally. She looked at me, eyes glassy. "Do you really want this to be the end?" I met her gaze. "It already ended. I'm just choosing peace now." I opened the door and stepped back inside. She stayed there for a moment, her hand hovering as if she might knock again, then turned and walked slowly down the path toward her car. I watched from the window as she got in and drove off. Lucas looked up at me. "Was that Grandma?" "Yeah," I said softly. "Is she coming back?" I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "No, buddy. I don't think so." He nodded, accepting it with a child's resilience. Then he smiled. "Can we finish our puzzle?" I smiled back. "Yeah, let's finish it." That night, after Lucas went to bed, I sat on the couch and let everything sink in. The noise, the years of walking on eggshells, the guilt, the constant struggle for approval, it was all gone. For once, my house felt like a home instead of a refuge. A few weeks later, Tyler came by. He looked better than I'd seen him in years. Calmer, more grounded. He told me he'd moved out of our parents' place completely and was renting a small apartment nearby. "Melissa's furious with me," he said, grinning faintly. "Apparently I'm a traitor, but it's worth it." "How's Dad?" I asked. He sighed, still pretending he's the victim. But he's quiet now. "You know how loud silence gets when someone's ego finally breaks." I nodded. Then Tyler said something that stuck with me. "You didn't just get revenge, Felix. You ended the cycle." That hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. I hadn't just exposed them. I'd stopped it from touching Lucas. From teaching him that love comes with conditions or that respect means silence. I'd broken something toxic that had been passed down quietly for decades. Later that summer, Lucas and I took a trip. Nothing fancy, just a cabin by a lake a few hours away. We spent our days fishing, skipping rocks, roasting marshmallows. No phones, no noise, no ghosts from the past. One evening, as the sun set over the water, Lucas said, "Dad, this is my favorite day ever." I smiled. "Yeah? What makes it your favorite?" He thought for a moment. "Because it feels like everything's okay." I looked out at the orange horizon, the reflection shimmering across the lake, and realized he was right. For the first time, everything was okay. When we got home a week later, I found an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. My father's. Inside was a single piece of paper. Not a letter, not an apology. Just a short note. "You were right. About all of it. Dad." That was it. No excuses. No explanations. Just 7 words. I folded the note and placed it in a drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest power comes from no longer needing validation from the people who once held it over you. The next morning, I woke early, brewed coffee, and stood by the window watching the sunrise paint the sky gold. Lucas wandered in, hair messy, yawning. "Morning, Dad," he said. "Morning, champ." He climbed into my lap, and we sat there together, watching the light spill into the kitchen. It wasn't a cinematic ending. There was no dramatic music, no sudden redemption arc for anyone. Just peace. Real, earned peace. And as the sun rose higher, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not approval, not closure, not justice. I already had everything I needed. I glanced down at my son, smiling. "Hey, Lucas." "Yeah. You remember that toy police car from Christmas?" He grinned. "Yeah, the one with the broken wheel." I nodded. "We should keep it." As a reminder. Of what? I looked out the window, the sunlight catching the steam from my coffee. That no matter how small people make you feel, you always get to decide what you're worth. And with that, I finally closed that chapter of my life for good. Because the best revenge wasn't what I did to them. It was what I built afterward. Peace, success, freedom, and a life where my son would never have to be grateful for anything. He'd simply be loved.